Welcome, everyone, to another episode of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined by Chief Co-Host.
I'm Daniel Bishop. Hello.
Hey, Daniel Bishop. As Chief Recording Officer, I welcomed our Chief Co-Host to the show.
I'm Chief Co-Host. Does there need to be also another Chief Co-Host?
Well, we only have two people right now, and I'm the recording officer, so you're gonna have to make do.
All right, I'm pulling double duty today. Well, I think we've got a lot on the plate today. Should we talk about it?
I want to know
about the plate.
Tell me now.
All right, software and hardware, two different kinds of ware. Which is going to reign supreme in the future, and maybe is it even time to shift gears?
We will be shifting gears into one of Daniel's new projects, or his experience where he created an entire project using AI, and I'm curious if it actually worked.
So going to talk about Hunter, who's been on the hunt for some new shades and heard about something very interesting in the augmented reality space. Maybe the game is being changed yet again.
One game definitely changing is Dungeons and Dragons. And the question is, will Hasbro's adoption of AI shape the future of Dungeons and Dragons, storytelling, and even bookmaking, or will it undermine them all? It's all up right now, because you are listening to
They Might Be Self-Aware.
I saw a conversation the other day that was basically suggesting that people should get out of software now and get into hardware. Whereas again, previously people would say get out of hardware and get into software. The supposition being that software is going to be solved by AI in the near future / is already happening now, and that potentially the incredible advances soon to come are going to be on the hardware side. I don't know if you have any opinion on that.
I don't think that software engineers are going away anytime soon. I say that right next to having yesterday used Claude with its
3.5 sonnet.
Claude 3.5 sonnet with artifacts. I said, hey, I want to make a Kubernetes web app. It's going to play nicely with AWS, and it's this and this and this. Just all of the technical jargon blarfed into it, and then it said, great. Here's the main file. Here's this file. It didn't make one artifact. It made the entirety of the project structure. And I just saved all of those files and put them into my code editor, Visual Studio Code, for those of you who care about such things. I really love it. Had to rename a couple of things. It basically worked like out of the box. Now that was a simple thing, and I actually haven't tested okay, here's the CI/CD pipeline aspects of it and did that hook up properly. But 90% of an entire project that is bare bones and skeletal and so on, but that I could flesh out over time, we're really getting close to the point where you could just say, make me an entirety of a brand new project that touches up against multiple files in multiple places and actually hooks up to your Azure CI/CD pipelines or GitLab or GitHub or this or that. That is going to continue. We keep saying this is the worst that it's ever going to be. I still don't think the entirety of software engineers are going to go away. I really don't, at least not for a while. And I don't mean like 6 months or 2 years. I do think that there's going to be a place for them for a very long time. Maybe less so for junior engineers. It's going to be harder and harder.
What about the idea, though, that a lot of the really cool stuff is going to come from the hardware side?
I think you can have both. Cool stuff's been coming from hardware and from software for a long time. Why would it stop being one at the expense of the other?
If one becomes more commoditized, and I think that's the suggestion, that software is becoming more and more commoditized. There's articles out, now about the death of SaaS, that the software as a service business model is over because it's not as valuable as we thought it was. It's harder to keep customers than we thought it was. And companies can develop their own internal solutions for less and less money. The cost to do that, the time to do that is that curve's going down. And as that curve goes down, SaaS dies a little bit more and more.
I do think there are some companies that are going to die off, and some of them are brand new companies, the ones that saw the advent of large language models and said, we're going to do software as a service of, we'll help you make little AI agents to do all of these things. I know because I actually just had a talk with one of them. I'm not going to mention them by name. And everything they showed, I was nearly offended by of, we could do that. Not only could we do that, we could do that quickly and easily. And their entire business model for thousands of dollars a month per however many customers is, granted, making it really easy to do that. And some companies don't want to invest in having ML engineers or whatever to do these things. And so I still think there is a place for companies like that. But that place is starting to shrink, I will admit. I don't think that like software engineering in general is going to go away, though. Similarly, on the hardware side of things, what happens when hardware is commoditized because humanoid robots can start doing all kinds of different actions for
Sure. It can switch back. And it used to be that hardware was all about the hardware and it wasn't about the software at all. Probably the most famous story about that is IBM is going to release their first sort of major consumer focused PC, and they need an operating system. So they end up going to Bill Gates, who secretly buys an operating system off of a friend of his, and then goes to IBM. It's like, all right, we'll bring you DOS, the disk operating system, but we want to retain all the rights and ownership of it. And IBM's like, we don't care. There's no money in software. We make all of our money selling these big, giant computers, and now these consumer-focused computers. Yeah, sure. Keep all your rights. And that started, one of the largest companies of all time.
Yeah, one of the richest people on the planet now.
It was probably the beginning of that inflection point where the hardware became more commoditized. Like the machine that you're running on, whether it's a Dell or a Compaq or an HP, no one really cares all that much. It's about the software. And there's some suggesting that maybe we're getting close to a flipping point again to making it more about the hardware and less about the software. Obviously, we've been talking about some AI gadgets here recently. This week, Zuck, I don't know if you followed any of the stuff at his, what is it called, Meta Connect, but he demoed, not for sale, and it was honest that they're way too expensive right now, but some really cool AR glasses, we'll call them, that potentially could be an important part of the future.
Yeah, VR and AR, we're still in the big, clunky, almost prototype phase. I think years from now, that is going to be way slimmer form factor. Maybe it's offloading most of the compute to a puck like they have for the Apple thing now, where it's just on your phone or whatever it ends up being. But that commoditization of hardware, I think, is in two wildly separate fields. There's enterprise hardware. People use AWS because they don't want to set up an entire server farm themselves.
Yeah.
People use Claude, or they're using Dolly, or they're using Midjourney, or using Suno for music, or this or that, because they don't want to have bought a ton of GPUs to put into some place that's going to be obsolete in 18 months anyways to put together, and you have to have highly paid people to manage these large physical pieces of infrastructure when they could be renting it for pennies on the hour. So I think there is something about that commodity of scale and like buying compute, I guess, as a service, you could say at that point, versus gadgets, the stuff that like individual consumers would actually use, and that actually use being a physical piece of hardware instead of the output of models. So I do think that there is a commoditization of some aspects in this like AI kind of space, but it has to be in gadgets. And I'm putting my money a little bit where my mouth is on that. We've talked about the Claude like note-taking pin before.
Yeah.
I don't have my Remarkable here with me, which I do still really like writing on. It's the most paper, like they say, it feels just like writing on paper. Yeah.
My feeling about it has improved from last week because I showed my Remarkable Pro.
You're using all four colors.
What the biggest difference for me was instead of trying to use it in portrait mode, use it in landscape mode. And then it changed my world.
How? Both how and why?
Because it's too big to hold in portrait mode straight up, and then trying to write on it. It's awkward. It's larger than a piece of paper. It's too big. But when I switch it to landscape mode, I find that, again, the amount of space and the layout, like, it just makes more sense. Now, I'm putting it down on a desk and, like, writing on it or drawing or illustrating or figuring something out. But, yeah,
it's
landscape
like your own little
mode.
mini whiteboard now instead of a piece of paper that you're writing on.
It has made it much more enjoyable.
Form factor's important.
I'm still on the edge about whether I ship it back or not. I've got my, 82 days remaining to make the decision. But, yeah, so you're going full Plod.
Yeah, I
Mr.
like
Plod, Dr. Plod.
I like writing things down. I think that people do a better job of remembering things when you write them down. I'll just think that there's research that shows that you'll remember things better if you write it down. And it's okay if you type it, and then it's not as great if you just hope to remember it. I'm going to hope to have something remember for me with a little pin. I was concerned about some privacy aspects of it at first. Like, you have this always on thing that's just recording everything. It turns out you got to press a button to have it record, and that makes plenty of sense. Oh, of course, if you were to have it just record all the time, it would burn through the battery too quickly. But, I'm going into a meeting. Hey, two-party consent state. Is everybody fine with me? Great, click. And then you have a recording of the meeting. I think that there is a lot of possibility for being able to be more engaged in the moment. I've been in multiple meetings, even very recently, where I'm too busy trying to take notes down and I'm missing aspects of the conversation. And I don't want to listen to an entirety of a recording to then have to get my notes later. Now I can have my cake and eat it too. I'll just stay engaged and pay attention and maybe kind of whisper down to the little flower on my lapel saying, make sure to remember that. And hopefully I'll get my AI summary at the end. I just ordered it. I haven't gotten it yet. We'll talk about it once I've had it and had the chance to use it.
Does it have a light when it's recording? Do the other people know, or you have to tell them?
I didn't see if there was or wasn't, but I suspect there's probably like a fun little green light that shows that it's recording. I'm going to guess yes.
Had a little speaker and played out a little disclaimer every time you did it.
We are going to start recording.
Where's my robot
You consent.
voice?
You are being recorded.
I'm looking at their website right now. I don't know. It doesn't look like there is a light on. There's like there seem to be a few different form factors. There's the pin, and there's something that's basically the size of a credit card. That one does not. It has like a toggle switch with a little bit of red there so that you can see. But I think it just is a little recorder. We'll find out. I don't know. But taking advantage of AI wherever you want in a meeting got me kind of thinking.
Yes.
About other places that I have meetings that aren't like work meetings. And the biggest recurring meeting with a bunch of people that I would maybe want summaries of or automatic notes taken for is when I play Dungeons and Dragons. This may surprise listeners to this show. I'm a huge nerd, and I plays me some D&D.
I've only played, I think I played once in middle school, and I don't really remember it. So give me
it's
the
collaborative storytelling. That's the smallest nutshell. It's the whatever the smallest nut is. That shell is D&D is collaborative storytelling. You're going to sit down and sure you're slaying gnolls and saving princesses and exploring the occasional dungeon, slaying the occasional dragon. But what it is there's a person who helps set up kind of the world and all the non-player characters. And then
that's the dungeon master.
That's the dungeon master or game master or whatever you want to call it. And then you have your players, and that party of brave adventurers are going to go off and save the day, hopefully, or die miserably trying. And it's a back and forth. It's not combative of the DM trying to win versus the players trying to win D&D. You don't win D&D. I guess winning is everyone has a good time. Really, being a DM is you're a product manager, and the product is fun.
And are you just making it all up, or are there actual rules? This has been a question of mine that I've never bothered to actually find the answer.
There are rules. It's a structured set of collaborative storytelling. So the player's handbook, this is your core set of rules. This is how I make my character. These are the roles that you'd make in these kinds of scenarios. And the DM is going to tell you, okay, if you're going to attack that thing, roll to attack. The difficulty class is 15. I get a 16. You hit. Great. Roll the specific die for your sword for damage or for the fireball that you send off or whatever it ends up being. So there's a lot of rules that help dictate how the game sort of plays, but the actual scenarios can be completely made up by the dungeon master. And then there are pre-written adventures that you could go through of you show up in this spooky town and then you meet these specific people and that guy gives you a quest to go slay the whatever. There are infinite ways to play this. You can take the pre-written adventure and turn it on its head or go off the rails halfway through. It's all up to you.
But you can't win. There isn't like a winner at the end of the game.
There might be a story that you successfully get to kind of the conclusion of, but winning, you could kind of think of it almost in a video game sort of style. This is my quest and we successfully completed the quest and got paid for it. But to think of D&D like it's a video game, I think is doing it a disservice. It's really, you are crafting this kind of long form storytelling thing with friends. Now, granted, what I'm mostly describing is like a campaign. You could also do just a one shot where we're sitting down for 3 or so hours, start to end, and then you could almost say you win in that people survived to the end or they rescued the princess or whatever it ends up being. But I'm playing this with a bunch of friends. I'm in a game where I'm running it, and I'm in a game where I'm playing. And for, frankly, both, but especially the one that I'm playing, just like in these other meetings that I described, I want to stay engaged in what's going on.
How long is a game? Not just like one night?
No, so I'm playing in a campaign for both of these games that I described, and this is multiple sessions. We're a year plus into weekly games with the one, and we're half a year into the one that I'm running. And that one will probably keep running for maybe another year. I've done 3+ year campaigns. I've done ones where start to end, it was 6 months. I've done one shots or few shots where it's one instance of you playing or 3 or 5, and everything in between.
I mean, I've played Monopoly to the end, but that's about the longest game I've ever played.
Usually the bitter end, I would say. So a D&D game, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if it's 2 or less hours. Really, 3 is pretty good, up to 4 or so. If you're going to do more than 4, that's like we set aside our game day and we're really it's basically multiple sessions at that point with a break for lunch or whatever. I think 3 to 4 hours is a sweet spot of you can keep everyone pretty well engaged at that point. No one's having to give up their entire day or night or whatever.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine any role for AI in Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, I want to stay engaged in the game and be listening to the other characters and what they're contributing to the story and listen to the DM and make sure I'm not missing any vital plot points or the name of yon castle that we have to go to. Yeah. And I have a bad memory. And so I take notes. I'm the note taker. Okay. Turns out one of 2 in the one that I'm playing in. And I take notes as best I can. And I miss certain things, both note taking and then in the plot. And, what was that? What was the name of the person that we just met? What if I could just record it and then it tells me, here is a summary of all the stuff that happened in your adventure. And I've actually tried that with like Zoom, for example, because we use Zoom for our video chats. This is an online game. Zoom, with its transcriptions going into its summaries that it gives you, are business focused. And so I recorded a D&D session and it basically said like, and here are the key stakeholders and then like the name of each of our characters and action items at the end of the meeting were this, and you'll go to this location next. And it was definitely not quite what I wanted. I want something halfway between just a 1-page summary and in a business sense, and then also just a raw transcript that I'd have to pull through later. Allegedly, Claude has a bunch of different like modalities that you could go through of, and this is how you're going to actually listen to. Yeah,
I would imagine
the thing, and
you'd create a good system prompt for that.
Yeah, right. And I could probably do the same sort of thing offline with existing sorts of things, but I want to try out this little pin for both business and pleasure, as it were. But that got me thinking about what are some other uses of AI. I have something called Fantasia. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but most of my friends now know it. I didn't even know this was a thing until a few years ago. When people say like, close your eyes and imagine a verdant field, and there's a stop sign right in the middle of it. Most people could have some degree of actual visualization of what that would look like. To me, nothing.
That's weird.
Not a damn thing. So generative AI, from like images perspective, your mid journeys and so on, has been a huge boon to me whenever someone describes a castle, and then I will take some of those descriptors and I'll put it into like mid journey, and it gives me not whatever the person necessarily had in mind. It's not a perfect thing, but it's way closer than whatever nothing I can come up with. I can keep in my mind, here's a set of factoids of what the thing is supposed to look like, but I can't describe, like, I don't see it. So having something to actually look at can really, really help me. And as a dungeon master too, I can put together a setting and here's all these things, but some of the sensory aspects are always missing to me. And so if I take the description that I have of the prison that the party is approaching to save somebody out of, I put that into Midjourney, then it comes up with a picture, and that isn't necessarily like canonized in my mind, but there's aspects of, oh, there's a cool, like it drew a drooping line with skulls coming off it. Cool. I'll add that into my description, and like it helps me.
Okay, I can see that.
Evoke the other senses besides just a set of factoids of, and there is a wall and it's 20 feet tall and it's made of this gray stone and this. Right. It's like, okay, by seeing a picture, I can now more easily imagine the sounds of the city or the smell of the salt spray because it shows like a wave crashing up against something.
So collaborative, boons, iterative process where you come up with the initial description, which you feed in, then it describes it back to you with some of its texture, some of its hallucinations, we could call them maybe.
Right.
And then you adapt the parts that you like, and then you potentially feed it back in and
collaboration. At the heart of D&D, I'm working with AI to help craft a better story at this point. And I will readily admit, and hopefully my players are not too upset with me for this, I've used ChatGPT, mostly that, but a couple of other AI things as well, for like, I need names of characters, or I need like, who are the 3 most important people to meet in this little city that I hadn't planned for them to go to, but oops, they just showed up. Hey, I need a 5-minute coffee break, guys. Click, click, click. And I could easily come up with something myself, but having ChatGPT in 30 seconds barf out, here's 10 different people and what their entire deal is and like a specific thing about them, I'll pull out the bits that I like and discard the ones that I don't. Again, collaborating with the AI. I'm not relying on it. I'm still definitely the creative force behind it. I do think you could say, ChatGPT, make me an entirety of a one shot, and here's all of the people, and here's, you know, scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, fight 1, fight 2, social encounter, denouement, end of campaign, you know, whatever it is. I think you could do that, and it would probably be playable, and people would probably have fun, especially if a creative DM puts a little bit of a spin on it. I don't think we're putting DMs out of business yet.
I know there was some...
It is a creative tool that we should be using.
I know there was some rumblings in the news recently. The company that owns D&D, it's Hasbro, right?
So Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast.
Okay.
Owns / Shepherds Dungeons & Dragons.
And so I guess Hasbro's CEO announced that they're going to be more heavily adopting AI as part of their process. And is it generating these campaigns? Am I using the right language here? And embracing user-generated content? I don't know. Did you follow that part at all? And does that relate to what you're talking about? Or is that something completely different?
Without working for the company, I'll never know exactly what initiatives that they have going on in there. But the head of Hasbro, Chris Cox, was talking at a Goldman Sachs conference, and he was describing how D&D and Magic the Gathering, which are the 2 cash cows for Hasbro, these are absolutely like the 2 crown jewels of the Hasbro crown, talks about we're already using AI in development, and that it's a mostly machine learning based AI or proprietary AI as opposed to ChatGPT. What I think he probably means there is what basically every company of any given size is using, which is linear regression models and like what you could technically sell as AI, but it's simple algorithms of like sales forecasts or churn prediction from, you know, given vendors that you work with, or a lot of different boring, non-sexy, what we're thinking of for AI these days of generative AI and images and text. It's other machine learning stuff. Of course they're using that. They have data analysts and data scientists. There's no way they're not doing that. Doesn't surprise me at all. And this is where he says, as opposed to a ChatGPT approach. Counter to that, then, he also says, quote, I'm probably more excited about the playful elements of AI. I play with probably 30 or 40 people regularly. There's not a single person who doesn't use AI somehow for either campaign development, which I just admitted to, right, or character development or story ideas, which I also said I do. That's a clear signal we need to be embracing it. Still agree with him, still say fair at that point. But this is a business that is really trying to wring every last cent that they possibly can out of a couple of properties right now. And they're not going to give this to us and it's just helping embrace that creativity and that back and forth sort of process. They're probably looking at what can they do for enhancing the bottom line. This is a business that wants to make more money. And so what about using AI to replace character art in their books? What about using it to help write out the pre-written adventures or to do the editing on them? And all of a sudden you're firing or not hiring creative human beings that should be working on this very human centric storytelling kind of adventure. And that's for D&D. For Magic the Gathering, this would be using generative AI to help make the art for the cards. And you could say, sure, company? You could just make that, but then you're putting a bunch of talented artists out of a job. And I think that's where the dividing line should be, is we should embrace these technologies to enhance the storytelling potential of the average DM. Hey, help me generate a list of people that maybe we could be talking to in this town here, as opposed to the book that you just paid $40 for had less people involved in making it because we fired half of them because we thought generative AI could do just as good of a job. That's what I'm really, really worried about.
You're really, really worried about the inevitable future?
No, I don't think it's the inevitable future. I think that's a pessimistic view of it. We've talked multiple times about the fallout that comes pretty darn quickly from, like, ESPN had a bunch of writers and they got rid of a bunch of them. And now we just have this AI generated schlock that isn't as humane and isn't as accurate in many cases as what people would have made. Or this entire newsroom got fired and replaced with, it's just ChatGPT now. And okay, speaking of a business wanting to make its bottom line better, your revenue starts dipping because people aren't going to the site because you lost all of the trust, not just by replacing people, but the quality has gone down. Yes, maybe AI will continue to the point where it could write a better article than people.
A better campaign.
Or a better D&D campaign, or it could balance your Magic the Gathering cards better or whatever.
And I think that's kind of part of what the CEO is saying is the people writing campaigns are already leveraging AI to make it easier to write the campaign and hopefully even also making better campaigns in the process. And so doesn't it make sense that it should cost less money to professionally develop one of these campaigns now because the creator of that campaign can leverage AI tools?
I wonder if then, like, is there something that the average consumer, there's a whole breadth of them out there, but is there something about the average consumer that wants a totally human-made product? And this is going to sound a little silly, but I'm now thinking of like Amish furniture that some folks really like to get. Like, this was made by hand. It was hand tools. There wasn't a machine lathe and within 1,000 yards of it when it was made, or a bed or a set of dressers or, whatever it is. But I think there is a place for people who really want there to be something that was made by hand. Is that enough of people? Is D&D, like, where's that sort of 50% mark?
You want farm to table D&D.
Right. Yes, exactly. Ethically sourced farm to table Dungeons and Dragons. I do think that there is something to be said for using ChatGPT and its ilk as a collaborative tool. And if I'm going to sit down and write a new adventure, it could be really interesting to take something with a large context window and say, here's all of the notes on my campaign so far. Can you find any logical inconsistencies or like weird gaps? And maybe AI is at a place where it could say, you say this person's here, but then that they're already dead over here. Is that something that you should be worried about? This is a tool that we could use. You could call it for editing, or you could call it for, helping with at the storyboarding level. We've talked about this for movie generation as well. Are storyboard artists going to be in danger? I think the answer probably is ultimately yes.
Of course it's yes. Of course it's yes.
Of course it's yes. But I do think that there is a reason that we should all be upset that human jobs that currently exist for art, the thing that humans really like to think, is something that sets us apart and that machines can start encroaching on. I don't want to see anyone lose a job. Definitely not lose a job. And I still am, I think, a little irked about the idea of people not getting new jobs by virtue of machines being able to do some of this as well, or what the company thinks is as well enough.
Okay, but you do agree with the principle that it should cost less money to professionally develop a new Dungeons and Dragons campaign today than it did a year ago.
I think that the collaborative nature with AI can only go so far.
I didn't say that AI can do it. I just said it's cheaper overall to develop the same campaign because you can leverage. You have better tools. You're doing the same work, but you have better tools.
Are we talking about just writing the content, or is this like layout editing of what's going to show up on the actual
The whole
pages?
book. We got to produce these books, right? And they sell these books, and that's a significant way they make their money.
Sure.
Producing one of these books today should cost less money than it did 3 years ago because of AI.
I don't know. The Dungeons and Dragons books themselves have, I think, over the course of evolution of the last 10 years or so, seem to put a little bit more emphasis on a premium kind of offering. And maybe this is headed in that direction of farm to table D&D. Look at all the artists that we employ. It's got gorgeous art. And some of them, people like to collect the alternate cover version of some of the books. So they'll have, here's book one alternate cover, and it's got that little kind of gold foil sort of sheen on the front, and people like to go for those. And I think it is cheapening the experience somewhat to say, and a person didn't make that image. It's cool though, ain't it? I do think that tarnishes the legacy of anything that is being put in front of us, to know it was made a little faster and a little cheaper, and hey, look, now you get 3 books a year instead of 2, and we're getting $120 worth of revenue instead of 80. And isn't that great for everybody? And then you think well, people lost their jobs for this, or other people, new people in the industry didn't get jobs for this. And if you look at it closely, there's an arm sticking out of the back of that guy where there probably shouldn't be. And that one has too many fingers. Some of these art things are, of course, getting better, but AI is very good at imitating existing styles and so on. I don't think that it has the creativity from nothing, at least not yet, of let's see a new art style, or let's see something that is really evoking what's on the page in a way that is truly representative of it, instead of a Mid-Journey style. It took a lot of the key concepts and kind of got it. I think there is still enough of a gulf there that I want people to be doing that. You could have AI give you 5 different, versions of what I think is supposed to go on this page, and then have an artist look at those and do their own interpretation based off of a theme that they're seeing that they like things from. Everybody should be using AI. I firmly believe everybody, regardless of basically their field, maybe not like construction, but in all these kinds of creative jobs, use AI to help enhance your own personal workflow. But I think it should be your personal relationship to AI. It shouldn't be the company trying to cut things down, and by things I mean people, to make its bottom line better. Let that company empower people to do what they're doing better, instead of let AI replace people. Let's call that my dividing line.
Okay. Well, we'll just have to let time be the judge and see how it plays out. I have my suspicions. You have yours. One of us will be correct, because unlike Dungeons and Dragons, there will be a winner, maybe. I don't know. Or, everything just becomes self-aware and none of it matters anymore. And we all start getting those, what is it? The basic income?
Yeah, universal basic income.
Universal basic income.
UBI. I don't want UBI for D&D because I don't want to be told, here's a story and it was cheaper. I want the enriching experience of something that is very personal between people.
Yeah, I think what you really want is, if you could separate the money from it, you want people that are super passionate about it and good at it to put their all into these things and in everything. And so maybe there's another way that AI will eventually get us there in our plight towards self-awareness. You've been listening to They Might Be Self-Aware, the number one AI-themed podcast about self-awareness, I think, maybe. Possibly, I have to check the charts. But you know what? If you have counterfactual information, please provide it. And we'll swiftly feed it into ChatGPT and ask it what it thinks.
Right.
You wanted more of this? You could like and subscribe, and more will just magically appear. You pick the platform: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, really any sort of podcast indexing search engine. You will most likely find They Might Be Self-Aware. And until next time,
They might be self-aware.